time for the Founders Award portion of the evening. I hope everyone has enjoyed their dinner so far. Dessert will be coming out soon. And to kick things off, we have Kathy Bleicher. She is the chair of the Founders Award Committee, so please welcome her.
Thank you, John. I'll be quick. So Founders Award is given to an individual who has made an outstanding contribution to forest entomology in Western North America. Management, extension, consultation, research, teaching, mentorship. You can find more information on our website. And you can also find some summaries, videos, sometimes a script of some of the past Founders Awards talks that are there, which are actually great to go back and listen to or read. And there's also the information if you would like to nominate someone for the Founders Award. What's involved is basically writing and soliciting some letters from colleagues of support and submitting a CV for the nominee, and not real picky about the form, but there's some of these headings that you highlight their contributions under. So that is all that's involved. So don't get turned off by the forms are on the website, because I know a lot of us are government as soon as we hear forms. So please consider nominating somebody if you know. Okay, here's your Founders Award Committee. Sorry, I forgot to change the year. Joel sent me this. He's so helpful. But yeah, I messed that up. Okay, so myself, Celia Boone, Joel McMillan, Matt Hansen, Steve Cook. And if you're a graduate student and you would like to serve and you would like to have a shamelessly old photo of yourself on this slide, please talk to me. So Western Forest Insect Founders Award, here are the past recipients. And you can see our current one from 2022, Iral Ragenovich, and I'm going to shortly turn it over. She was nominated by Steve Munson, who you see up there, received it in 2017. That's why you're here. That's why I'm here. And but before Steve introduces her, oh sorry, I should say she was nominated, sorry, by Kathy Sheehan, but Steve Munson was part of the contributing package. And before Steve introduces her, I'm going to turn it over to Rick Cooksey, who's the Director of Forest Health Protection of the U.S. Forest Service, who'd like to say a few words first.
Well, hi, thank you, and good evening. I just want to say how wonderful is it to be here during this week and on this evening. I really wanted to say thank you to Patrick, to Kathy, and the organizers. It is wonderful to be back together for this really important meeting. The Western Forestry Insect Work Conference has been a foundational event where people exchanged information and people got together to meet each other, share, and to engage in new relationships. And it is so wonderful to see all the new folks who have joined the Forest Service and are working in this community. This is a community, and it is really wonderful to see you all here. And on this night, it is my pleasure to be part of this, and I've really enjoyed the fact that we're going to recognize one of the most outstanding persons in this community. So I want to turn it over to Steve. He has a lot more to say, but thank you for being here. Please spend this time together nicely. And Iral, we love you dearly. You earned every moment of this.
So for those who don't know me, I was a group leader in the Ogden Field Office for Forest Health Protection for a lot of years. Anyways, yeah, I was one of three that nominated Iral, put the performance package together for her. Yesterday, she meekly came over and leaned up against me and said, "Steve, you're not going to embarrass me, are you?" And for those that know me, I would never do that. But I'll say that up for her retirement. You know, I'm glad, extremely glad, that she's part of the Founders Award group, and I couldn't be more happy for her. We have this plaque that we're going to present to Iral. There's a few things on here I'd like to mention. I think she's a woman of first. She was the first woman at Stephen F. Austin University to get a master's in forestry. And for a lot of you who don't know this, she was also the first woman in forest health protection, hired in 1975. So, yeah. So on this plaque, in addition to what I just mentioned, she's also the founder of the bark beetle and defoliator steering work groups. She had a lot to do with the aerial safety steering work group. She's progressed management approaches for Douglas fir tussock moth and digital aerial sketch mapping. She provided expertise and assistance to entomologists and land managers throughout the United States. She started in Pineville, Louisiana, back in 1975. She was there for 2 years, and then she went to Asheville, North Carolina for 2 years. And in 1979, she finally saw the light and came out west. And she was in Albuquerque and was there until 1984 when she moved to where she is currently in Portland. Now she's the regional entomologist for the Pacific Northwest. She's got a long storied history. I mean, I could go on, but I think she's going to cover a lot of this. She's done work in international forestry. After the fall of the Soviet Union, she went over to Lithuania and started their forest health program. She also worked with our colleagues in Russia and APHIS to develop a pheromone lure for Dendrolaemus sibericus that, you know, we're currently using in Mongolia. I mean, I could go on. She's done so much. She's had a long and storied career in forest health protection, and I couldn't be more proud to present this to her. So happy for you. Oh, probably want to see this.
Yeah. There you go. Oh, thank you.
There you go.
What'd you say?
I'm not going to sit down at all. So, I appreciate Steve making me a little bit younger than I am. I actually started in 1974.
That was close.
So I want to thank everybody here at the work conference for this award. The people who nominated me, like Steve and Kathy. I think the others were Ken Gibson and Bill Cecil. And they supported my nomination, and this award is the most prestigious, I think, award that any of the forest entomologists can get. And so in terms of recognition and contribution, I have to, Rick was making me cry, so I'm struggling here a little bit. And so it's one of the most rewarding parts of my career has been all of the colleagues and all of the people that I know out there in the audience, and many who have passed that mean a lot to me. And Kathy showed a picture of her poster up here that showed all the recipients of the Founders Award, and I'm very humbled and honored to be included amongst those amazing scientists and very notable people. So I want to thank everybody. We have a few recipients here. Steve, Munson received it, Ken Raffet was a recipient, and now Lorraine. So there are a few of us here. So I think I'm going to take this off. I'm going to try to juggle my glasses and this and my notes, and I'll probably go off my notes. But a week and a half ago, I received an email message from Bob Colson, who's a professor at Texas A&M University. And he said, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the East Texas Forest Entomology Seminar. And we would like you, if you can, to attend that, because you will be a data point. As the oldest graduate student in the East Forest, Texas seminar, because I was at Stephen F. Austin when that started in 1973. So I don't know that how I felt about being a data point, but now I know how an insect feels. So with a career of almost 50 years, there's a lot that I could talk about, and I was trying to figure out, well, how can I narrow this down so I don't put people to sleep? So I'm going to only talk about what I call the early years of my career, which is when I first started, just before I first started, and for the first couple of years, because those years were a very, very pivotal point, not only in my career, but in society. In 1965, they passed the Equal Rights Amendment. And that's kind of what started the transition to where they started looking at hiring women in the Forest Service. And it was a very tumultuous time. I don't know if people remember, there were a lot of civil rights riots. Well, a lot of people weren't even born when I started, right? But there were a lot of civil rights riots. There was a lot of women's movements for trying to get equal rights and equal things. And so that little bit of time was very pivotal. And I think that in the early 70s, I won't pin it down, but in the early 70s, I had the opportunity to be in the right spot at the right time to make a difference. And I'm very aware of that. Steve mentioned that I was the first woman to graduate with a master's degree from the School of Forestry at Stephen F. Austin. I also was while I was in school, I worked as a summer student in Montana on a timber inventory crew. And the other woman that I worked with, a lady named Laura, and I were the first women that they'd ever hired to work on a timber inventory crew. And they considered us kind of a trial balloon to see if women could work in the woods. They put us together to work on doing the inventory and regeneration plots. And I don't know if any of you have ever worked in clear-cut regeneration, but it's a lot of slash and it's really hard work. But it kept us out of the way of the men when they were doing the real timber inventory. So then I was also the first woman that was hired, not first woman, I need to correct that, first forest entomologist that was hired with forest health protection in the country. And so, that point in time when I started with in graduate school in 1970, there were 4 of us women in the whole School of Forestry. There were 3 undergraduates and myself. But it changed very quickly, because by the time that I graduated, there were 20 women enrolled in the School of Forestry in just 2 or 3 years. So it was something that happened very quickly. Not long after I was hired, there were, the Forest Service started hiring many women, both forest pathologists and forest entomologists. So it was only a short period of time that I was kind of by myself. And I remember that, let's see, when I first interviewed for my job with the Forest Service, I was at an ESA meeting, Entomological Society of Meeting in America, and I talked to 2 of they were entomologists from the Atlanta office, where the headquarters for state and private was at the time. And we talked about things like my education, what I could do, what they thought the position was. I had in undergraduate school a course in computer science, you know, and during that course we learned how to write code in BASIC and punch cards, and nobody here remembers that, I'm sure.
Oh, I do.
But if your hair is white.
Oh, thank you.
But that constituted knowing computer science. And Karen mentioned the other day that she was probably the most a Luddite in computers. And so if she's a Luddite, I'm an extraordinary Luddite. But that's why they thought that I could do some of the work. They assured me that they were not hiring me because I was a woman, but they were. And so we finished the interview. We were sitting there having coffee, and I got up to leave. And the guy said, he said, I meant to ask you, are you planning to get married anytime soon? And I said, no. I got a career. No. He said, good, because I was going to tell you, if you were planning to get married, don't bother to apply for the job.
Oh my God.
Those attitudes are, you know, that's not, I can't condemn them for that, because I was raised during that time, and I probably had very many of the same attitudes. I know I did, you know, because I made my choice between, do I want to give up my career, because that's what I thought I would have to do if I got married, or do I want a career? So it was not just them, it was the times and the attitudes of the times, right? So that's kind of the place that we were. And when I was hired to work in Pineville, Louisiana, there was a lot of resistance to that. They did not want a woman in that office. They came up with, or they didn't. They believed that women could not work in the woods. They said, if you hired a woman, we're going to have to do our job plus their job, because they're not going to be able to work in the woods. And they even said, well, a woman isn't going to want to work in their woods because she'll break her fingernails. And they also said that a woman could not be traveling with a man. you can't have a man and a woman traveling, and we travel all the time. Well, you know, it didn't take too long for them to get over that once they hired me, but those were the kinds of preconceptions that they were dealing with, and I understood that. So I wasn't too offended about that. But there was one guy that never told his wife when he was traveling with me, because she didn't understand it. So there was that. But I think as far as working with our job, you know, in addition to the fact that I was the first woman, and for a long time the only woman, there were other attitudes. You know, when they passed the Civil Rights Law in 1965, Civil Rights Amendment, that did not change the attitudes of the people overnight. The agencies, the government tried to start complying with it, but that didn't change the attitudes of the people. And one time I was working with a couple of the guys from one of the ranger districts in Louisiana, and we'd been out in the woods probably looking at southern pine beetle because that was the primary insect down there. And we were heading back to the office, and they stopped by this little country store to get some sodas or some water. And so I walked in. It was just a tiny place, and it was kind of in the backwoods of Louisiana. And I walked into the store, and it was really kind of dark. You know, it was a long, narrow store, had one light bulb hanging from a wire, and a little old guy behind the counter. And so we went in, and we got our soda pops, and the two guys had gotten theirs first, and they were standing kind of off to the corner while they were waiting for me. And I got my Coke, and I walked up to pay for it, and the guy was just standing there, just straight, you know, just stiff as a board, and staring straight ahead. And when I was in grade school, I had a friend that had epilepsy. And when she had a seizure, that's what she did. You know, she just went completely straight and stiff. And I was afraid that's what happened there. And I kind of looked around at the guys to see if they had noticed anything, and they were just talking. They seemed to be okay with it. So I thought, well, you know, maybe if I talk to him, I'll get a reaction. So I took my quarter. Yeah, Cokes cost $1 back then. So I took my quarter, and I kind of pushed it out on the counter, and I said, "Here's my quarter." And the guy he didn't really look at me, he looked at them. And I can't, if I say this, it's his words, right? It's not my words. He said, "God damn, the Forest Service, now you're hiring, what's happening to the Forest Service? First you hired niggers, and now you're hiring a woman." And I'm going like, yeah. So the people didn't change their attitudes that much as the people that I worked with. There was another graduate student that they had, I think he was on a SCEPS appointment or something. He was still in school, but he would come down and work with us and then go back in the summertime and then go back up to school. And they often sent Lincoln and I out together to work in different places. And so we got to know each other quite well. You know, Lincoln was a really personable guy. And he talked about things. He talked about the fact that he had marched from Selma to Montgomery with Martin Luther King and stuff like that. And we were working out in the woods one time. Again, it was hot. It was in the backwoods of Louisiana. We got ready to come back, and we were driving along, and I got kind of thirsty, and I said, yeah, I'd like to stop and get something to drink. And so we drove through this town, and I thought, well, maybe he didn't hear me. I want to stop to get something to drink. So we were driving along, and I said, well, can we stop next town and get something to drink? And we stopped, or we drove along, and we came to the next town, and I don't even, there's a lot of these little towns out there. And I said, can we get something to drink? I said, there's a store, can we stop there? And he drove right by. And I'm going, he said, what was wrong with that store? And he was kind of quiet. And finally he said, well, let me put it this way. I can run faster than you. And it had never occurred to me, from my perspective, what would happen if a black man and a white woman walked into a store in backwoods Louisiana. And we talk about safety in the Forest Service. But it's all about looking out for trees falling on your head and being careful when you're out in the woods. But there was another factor of safety that people didn't even think about. And I think that most of us did not even think about it, any of us that were white. Because, we look at a grocery store, we take it for granted that we can walk into that grocery store and get something to eat. And he had to look at it from the standpoint of what would happen to him and what would happen to me if we went into that grocery store. And that really puts some perspective onto what especially the black people in the South were dealing with. So I think I won't keep you guys too long, because I have a few pictures here, and they're mostly just those few they're from those few early years of my career. This was actually the first project I worked on after I was hired in Louisiana. We were testing a couple insecticides, Dursban and another one, for remedial and efficacy and remedial control of southern pine beetle. We'd spray the bulbs and hang them up. And it was very similar to actually to my thesis project. So I had fun doing it. It was okay. It was an easy project to work on because I was familiar with it. And let me see if I can figure out how to do this. So that's just a picture. And this picture actually appeared in a Forest Service newsletter or publication. This is from 1976. And they published a write-up about women in the Forest Service, and they had a little write-up about me and Joanne McElfresh, who was a forester up in Missoula at the time, and I had actually met Joanne when I was working on timber inventory. But I kind of wanted to point out this patch on my shoulder. And that was the Forest Service patch at the time. But what was kind of unique about this is that when I started, they did not have a field uniform for women. And so I had to buy my own jeans. I found some green jeans, And I bought my own jeans, and the guy who was the field representative for the field office in Pineville was kind of a slight man, and he gave me a couple of his shirts to wear, because they required that we wear the Forest Service uniform out there, but I didn't have one. So, I was talking to a lady, Donna Leonard actually, if anybody knows her, she's a Forest Service entomologist from the East one time, and she said, and this was not too long ago, about 6 years ago, 7 maybe. I kind of lose time with COVID and where that happened, but it was fairly recent in terms of time. And she said, the one question that I get from people is, how do you pee in the woods? And she said, I told them, just like everybody else. Well, I wasn't like everybody else in 1974. And it became, we had to be really creative. When we were working on this tent caterpillar project, the water was about 20 feet high, and we had to do all of the work in boats. And so, and we were out there all day. So we had to come up with some pretty creative opportunities. In this case, in most cases, we had 2 boats, and there were 4 of us, and so the guys would all pile into one boat, and I'd take my boat, and I'd go off this way, and they'd take their boat and go off this way. It was a little bit more creative when there was only 3 people in one boat. So anyway, I enjoyed this project. When they first asked me if I wanted to work on the project in the swamp, and I'm going, yeah, I'll go. But it was actually one of the most fun projects. And just a little bit about it. We were doing aerial application to spray, to try testing some insecticides, and we were testing BT. BT was brand new then. And let's see if we can kill insects with Bacillus thuringiensis. So this is a forest tent caterpillar, and we put these nets. They're not nets, that's actually plastic. And then there was a catch bottle at the bottom, and after we sprayed, the dead insects would fall down into the nets, and we'd come take our boats and put her under the nets and do the collection jars and collect it. But we had this for testing the efficacy, and we actually literally shot the branches out of the trees in order to measure the defoliation. Now that's standing in a boat. So, and I actually got pretty good at that. The canopy and the branches were about 40 feet above me, and I could usually get a branch in a single shot. If it didn't come down, and it took 5 or 6 shots, then I had to look and make sure I was not shooting ash, because you couldn't get it down. The one shot, water tube below, no problem. Ash, you could use up a whole box of bullets on that. So Rick, here's your wildlife story. We probably saw 5 or 6 of these guys every time we went out. And I got really, really good. Oops. at identifying from a long distance the pit behind that water moccasin's head, eyes. I mean, this guy probably was 5 feet long. I took the picture because I thought it was cool with all these caterpillars crawling all over it. But we often saw those, and back when the water was high, like I was talking about before, where it was 20 feet deep, so we were going around in boats. Well, there were no logs or anything else for the water moccasins to get onto, so they would come up the trees, and especially the bald cypress had these branches that would come out, and then there would be a lot of foliage there, and they would crawl out on these branches. And so you'd be going along in a boat, and you'd go by one of these branches, and there would be a water moccasin right there, you know, about a foot from your face. So you had to be really careful. When we were putting in those catch nets, we were going around and we were numbering the trees, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 with spray paint. And we were going along, and I was in the boat, and we'd gone through some places where we'd been bumping trees and stuff. You had to, once in a while, bump trees. And I was sitting there in the front of the boat. One of the other guys, Larry Abrahamson or Jim Harper or somebody, was driving the boat. And I was sitting there and I heard sssss. And I could tell it was coming down there from down by my feet. And I kind of froze and didn't move. And I finally worked up enough courage to kind of look down without moving. I had my knee against the top of the spray paint can, and I was painting my leg. So this was me. This was also in the swamp, and we came upon this mound of sticks, and it was a beaver lodge out in the swamp. And because the water was so high, the beaver had moved all of her babies up onto the top of the lodge. And so that's, I'm standing on the lodge there with one of the little beavers. And it was really neat. When the water went down and we were able actually to walk around in the swamp in waders, we came upon that lodge, and it was huge. It was like 20 feet high and about 40 feet in diameter. I had never seen a beaver lodge that big. But, so anyway, I won't bore you anymore. I just, working in the swamp is one of the first projects, and it was a very good time and a very fun time for the beginning of my career, and it's probably because of that, it was the beginning of my career, that I really remember that. But the swamp itself was a very magical place to work. And I hope that all of you out there, you young folks that are just starting out your careers, and even some of you that have been working for a while, really have as much fun as I had in working in the woods with forest entomology and with all of the colleagues that I've worked with. So I will just leave it there and let you guys go.
Hey, good job, Iral. great, Iral.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your presentation.